Welcome back, everybody. Monday morning show rolls on as we've got plenty to get to in our second hour. Kevin Feeney will join us, head football coach of the Spuds, 1 hour from now on Moorhead moving up to the top class in high school football in the state of Minnesota and what that means for the Spuds for the next 2 years. That's coming up, as I mentioned, about 10:35. Our next guest joins us each and every Monday and at 9:30. And when I asked him about doing this year-round, I said, hey, I don't think we're going to have a shortage of things to talk about. And here we are, the first full week of April, Sam Herder, and we got a bunch of FCS stuff to talk about. Clearly, Sac State gets all the headlines on this. Pete Thamel reported late last week. I know you've been on this from the get-go as well. They filed their paperwork to make the move to FBS. So can you guide people through now what is next for Sac State after this?
Yeah, so with stuff like this, and I kind of had to remind myself too that when it comes to these decisions, it's not the NCAA that actually makes these decisions. It is the different boards and councils and the governance structure of getting approval here. And then it goes up a level and you get approval there. And for Sac State to get this, because to go to FBS from the FCS, you need a conference invite. Like that's in the bylaws or whatever. But Sac State is trying to get a waiver saying they want to go FBS as an independent because they don't have a conference invite. And so they would first need approval from the FBS Oversight Committee, which is made up of FBS ADs, conference commissioners, associate ADs, commissioners. And then if that gets approved, then it would go to the Division I Council. And then, that I believe that would be the final approval. And so I think that's important to remember because last week or 2 weeks ago when Colorado and Syracuse, they had their waiver denied about having a spring game together or a spring scrimmage. All the headlines were, oh, the NCAA denies that waiver. And it wasn't the NCAA that denied it. It was the FBS Oversight Committee, which is schools themselves. And so for Sac State to get this approval, to get approved, they're going to need FBS administrators to be on board with it. And that makes my confidence go from, I think they're going to get this approved to 60%. I think they're going to get it approved. 40% they might not, just because as we know, the FBS doesn't want to grow.
Nope.
And so these commissioners and ADs could say, like, we're sorry, but like, if we let you do this, that's going to open up a pathway for another team to go, well, we want to do that too.
And what is your plan? That would be my question. What is your plan? Like, what are you banking on an invite that we don't know about, which they could have that information, Sam, and not want to make it public that, yeah, we know we're going to get an invite in 2027 blank. That to me would be question one. What is your plan and where's your money come from? Because that if you don't get good answers on that, this is a resounding no, in my opinion.
And I know the Sac State president and the NCAA president have met, to talk about this. And so I think Sac State is pretty confident they'll get this approval just because they've gone through, all the checks and balances and to make sure, things are in place. And they do have, they have a good pitch. They have, basketball renovations going on. They have, football renovation plans. They have the NIL pledges. They have the media markets. I believe I saw that Sac State was already working on, if this gets approved, working on some like scheduling agreements because to play independent, like that's really tough because you pretty much have to pay for every home game unless you get home and homes. But if you do home and homes, then you don't get paid for going on the road.
Nope.
And so it all kind of washes out. If they could get scheduling agreements with the Pac-12 or the Mountain West, that's another option as well. I don't know if that's in place or can be in place. And so I think Sac State's pitch to go independent is a good one. It's just a matter of what the FBS Oversight Committee thinks on it. And I don't know in these situations, like if the NCAA gives the FBS Oversight Committee a recommendation on like, hey, maybe we should pass this. I know sometimes it's the other way around where the NCAA pretty much just says, okay, you tell us what you want. And then the FBS Oversight Committee, like with that spring game, said, we recommend this doesn't happen this year. Then the NCAA says, okay, then we won't go through with it. So I don't know where that stands, where the NCAA could like nudge them and be like, we don't want to face another lawsuit.
Right.
So let's give them this waiver. At the same time, if you're Sac State, like who do you sue? Like if you sue the NCAA will just say, well, it's not our decision. It's these people's decision. I don't know.
So you're at 60-40?
I think 60% they'll get it approved.
Okay.
More of a gut feeling. Like initially, I was like, okay, I think they're confident they'll get it
Yeah.
approved. But then I'm like, oh yeah, it's not the NCAA that decides this; it's the FBS oversight committee. Then I'm like, well, maybe my confidence level goes down a little bit, but I think there's a better shot than not that this does get approved. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if the FBS Oversight Committee says we're not going to allow this right now. Let's wait a bit for whatever reason that may be.
And I know this isn't directly dealing with what you cover, but also Sac State then has to find a spot for the rest of its sports. I can't imagine the Big Sky's being, oh yeah, you can house the rest of your teams here if you're leaving in football. They have to have a plan for that too.
Exactly, and I don't like because we saw that with Northern Illinois. They left for the Mountain
Correct.
West, and the MAC said, "Well, your other sports have to leave too. That's
Yeah.
just it's easier on everyone if you just take the all of the sports out of our conference." And so I don't like I don't follow college basketball too closely, but I know like the Big West, I believe lost some members, so that could be a landing spot for Sac State. I mean, they could go to the WAC for their other sports, but that's on
Whack is
shaky
crumbling,
ground
right? That's not a good
as
idea.
well. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I would imagine the Big Sky will say, hey, if you're leaving for football, you have to leave, for all of your sports. And I think I don't know for sure, but there might be some bylaw in the Big Sky where it says if you're a full member, you have to be a football member
Football
as
member.
well. And
Yes.
so it might already be in the bylaws that hey, if your football program is leaving, like you have to leave anyways. And so that's another part. We're talking about the football side of it for Sac State, but they have a lot of other sports that have to find a place to land and land in a good
And
spot.
you reported this last week that the Big Sky upped its exit fee to $1 million. Did I see you reported that?
Yeah, they voted on that during, I believe, the Big Sky basketball tournament. I'm not sure if it's the AD's vote or the president's vote,
That's a
but
president
again,
thing.
that's not a Big
Yeah.
Sky conference decision. It's the schools, administrators that vote on that. So originally the exit fee for the Big Sky was 250,000. They upped that to 1 million.
Uh-huh.
I've heard there was only one no vote to that, and you can probably guess who
Put
voted
two and two
no.
together on that, right?
But yeah, so most of the Big Sky schools were on board to, up that exit fee. That just gives you a little bit more, protection. And, maybe they specifically did this because they knew they had an exiting member, but it's also helpful for the future too, to not make that decision so easy. I know within the last 10 years, the SoCon also upped their exit fee to $1 million because that just kind of gives you some added protection.
Yeah, the Valley one was not up. I think Mo State was like 250,000, which at that point is nothing if you're
Yeah.
going to make that move. So you have to add up the math here. It's a 5 million FBS fee to move up, a 1 million exit fee. The bills are starting to rack up, Sam. I don't know. Maybe they have this money, and if they do, then God bless them. But that is a ton of cash for a school that hasn't really shown a huge commitment to football.
Yeah, and recently too, I think in late January, a story came out that Sacramento State, the university, was making 40 to 45 million dollar budget cuts. The
Cuts.
university, I
Right.
know the athletic department and the university are kind of separate in a sense, but at the same time, if your university is making budget cuts while your athletic department is probably going to ask for more money to make this move and to help this move, that's not always a good look. But
Yeah.
I know their Sac State's counter argument is if we go FBS, enrollment will go up, and that will help with because every university, or not every, but most universities are dealing with that enrollment issue. And so their argument is yes, we're making budget cuts on the university side, but if we go FBS, that increases our name recognition, increases enrollment, and then that will help with our budget. But just on the surface, your university makes cuts and you're making this expensive move. You can understand why some people will be like, why are you doing this now? It doesn't seem like the best time to be making this move
Yeah.
right now.
Speaking of the FCS Oversight Committee, a week from today is when they meet again. And likely the biggest talking point, Sam, is going to be on signing off on 12 regular season games. I keep hearing the momentum is towards that. Have you heard anything different on this happening for 2026?
Yeah, it sounds like there's strong momentum that it will get passed. And I had Montana State's athletic director, Leon Costello, on my podcast last week, and I asked him about it, and he said, he loved it. Even from coming from a program that usually is playing a lot of
Yep.
quote unquote extra games, playoff games, he still likes that the football season, like because it's so limited, he likes having that opportunity to play one more game. And he made a note too that said, a school isn't going to be required to play that 12th game. just like this year and last year, where there's a 12th game option, you can still play 11 games if you want to. And so starting in 2026, you can play a 12th game, you don't have to. You don't have to schedule that extra non-conference game. And so that's why I think for some schools they have trouble
Yep.
scheduling as it is, and so they might just decide not to schedule that 12th game. But for the teams that want to be in playoff contention, like you want that extra Division One game just to have 8 wins instead of 7 wins.
Another
And
data
so,
point, man.
so
Exactly
if
right.
there is any pushback, you can just tell those teams, well, you don't have to
Yep.
do this 12th game. And so that's why I think even more so now that this will most likely get passed.
Here's my idea then. Make it like a great week, how the FBS does it with the highlight games. Do it there with the FCS. Have the top teams play each other. If you want to get people excited about it, do that for that first week.
And I told Leon too. I'm like, you need to be on the phone with Ivy League schools because
there you go, that one. Yes,
because they need to beef up their non-conference if they want to get situated well for high playoff seeds. And I also don't, because the Ivy League starts 2 or 3 weeks after everyone else.
Correct.
Like, are they going to bump that up? I don't know how that works academically, but I think the Ivy League will probably want to start scheduling some tougher non-conference opponents instead of just kind of sticking with the Patriot League and some CAA teams. And so maybe that opens the door for some home and homes with NDSU and Princeton and Montana State and Harvard. Like that's exciting matchups.
Let's
right there.
go. Come on. On the flip side, as we mentioned, the actual portal window doesn't open for football until next week. And South Dakota is going to have 2 guys in there, including their leading tackler, Gary Bryant III, probably their best offensive lineman that was coming back in Joe Cotton. Does that, in your mind, change where you value South Dakota heading into 2020? I mean, they've lost now 4 dynamite playmakers off of last year's roster into the portal.
Yeah, I still think I'd be leaning towards South Dakota as the preseason number 2. And so like that necessarily doesn't change my mind just because Montana State and South Dakota State, they have a good core coming back, but there still are too many question marks for those 2 teams. So I would still probably lean the Yotes as far as being preseason number 2, but now that they lose 2 more guys, you kind of question their ability to push, NDSU for that national title. And we knew Mike Grace was going to be leaving. Like we kind of already knew that, but South Dakota got through the first transfer portal window, and you look, okay, they have 4 starting offensive linemen coming back. They might have the best O-line in the FCS, plus Charles Pierre Jr. coming back at running back. Well, since then, and really since the head coaching change, they lost 1 offensive lineman who followed their O-line coach to Vanderbilt.
Bryce Henderson. Bryce Henderson.
Bryce Henderson. And then you go, okay, 3 starting offensive linemen coming back, that's pretty good. But then they lose Joe Cotton, who's really good. Now you're down to 2 starting offensive linemen, and that kind of makes you go, all right, the offense should still be good, but now they have more guys to replace than not. And then defensively for South Dakota, they lose a lot of starters, but they have a talented secondary coming back and their top 2 tacklers coming back. Well, now they lose their top tackler, and you go, okay, maybe the defense won't reload as well as I thought they would. So it does make you hesitate a bit more about South Dakota. Just like naturally, they lose 2 guys pretty quickly. Yeah. At the same time, I still think they have enough coming back to be a really good team. That's just a lot of talent gone. But I do know they've recruited really well. Like last year at this time, they had a lot of holes to fill, and they did that and got better. And so, I still think there's confidence on South Dakota. But when you lose players like this, you kind of go, okay, that's 2 tough losses in pretty quick succession there.
April 7th, and then no shortage of things to talk about. And I know next week is going to be the same as we get closer to the spring portal window opening. Great stuff as always, bud. Have a great week. We'll see you next week, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Sam Herder joins us each and every Monday, 9:35. Give us the lowdown on FCS football. Boy, there was no shortage of that going on over the weekend. We'll break. We come back. We'll wrap up our first hour. Big second hour plan. Jeff Kolpak will lead us off. And, of course, Kevin Feeney coming up to talk some Spuds football. As we roll on a busy Monday morning, we're back after this.